Back on CBS Sports HQ, live from Super Bowl 58. We have the pleasure of being joined by a Super Bowl champion, head coach of the Denver Broncos, Sean Payton, joining us here on set. Coach, it's great to be with you, and it's great to have a little extra ice on the set as well.
This is the only week this stays in a sock drawer, in a sock drawer. Honest to gosh, but it always gets pulled out for this week, and it's a special week for our league. I'm
going to take you back there in a little bit, but first, you're with us on behalf of Zebra Technologies. Can you tell us what you have going in terms of a partnership with them?
Yeah, so look, Zebra's 10 years now with the league, and basically when we see the next-gen stats on TV, you know, players running miles per hour, all these chips that are put in the shoulder pads allow us just to track all the kind of fun stuff we like, but then it also allows us to track practices. And for me, 7 years with them now, it was more about what practices were like, measuring, you know, a receiver, for instance, goes 6.5 miles at practice generally. And then if we have outliers, you know, Brandon Cooks was somebody in his early years was overtraining. So that was the excitement for me relative to health and safety. It's in the balls now. You know, does the ball cross the plane, the end zone? Where does it go out of bounds? I mean, all that stuff is kind of coming.
Yeah.
But what we see now is next gen, and we're all familiar with that. I mean, I feel like that's been the last 3 or 4 years, regardless of what broadcast. You know, we kind of see speeds. We kind of see fastest of the day, fastest of the weekend. It's kind of cool, and it's in our supermarkets. We go to Target. This is the barcode company.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
You said 6.5. I just, some quick math. That was half the distance you said you ran around Las Vegas a few years back.
The half marathon I ran here, that was like molasses with one of these, right?
Would have loved to see the numbers.
The numbers weren't good.
It's funny how far we've come from having no water breaks back in the day to all this technology.
We didn't know better.
The salt towel.
It's incredible, right?
We didn't. And you know what? Honestly, in our roles as teachers and educators, we're here in 2024, and we're still finding out more in sleep, more in nutrition, and that's really our job, is to keep moving forward. This is one element that allows us to do that.
Has a lot of the change made it tougher to be a coach? I mean, for example, you don't hit as much, you don't have as many practices, you don't have as many padded practices. Has that made it tougher for you guys?
I think, well, look, I'll give you an example. We are allowed to be in pads. We are allowed to hit. They've reduced those periods, but they've reduced them for every team. 2 years ago, we finished 32nd in the league relative to players that missed games because of injury. And there was a certain way that team practiced, and I get it. Last year was much different, and I do think for our players that you have to develop callus. Like, you have to develop callus, and in fairness to them, so that they stay healthy. And we finished second in the league relative to players missing time because of injury. I would say, I don't know that it's gotten more difficult, because the landscape is for all 32, and I still think the players, they want to be inspired, they want to maximize their earning potential, they want to have success, they want to be disciplined, and then the teaching methods change, though, and that's the fun part about it.
Coach, I got you a year and a week since that decision was made. How was your February this year different than your February last year?
So listen, this time last year, I'd just been named head coach. I was on the Fox set. We were doing the game last year, Chiefs-Eagles, and I would go back to the hotel with my computer and Zoom 4 or 5 interviews, trying to get the staff together. So obviously we're further along relative to our coaching staff, the program that we want to establish. And yet, I would say one thing that's different. The year that I was out and I was just doing media, you know, game day was that Sunday, and you prep Saturday, you have production meetings in the morning, and you really want to have a good day when you're on air. You want to be just on point. And then you go home, and Monday you walk the dog, you go to Starbucks, you might play some golf, and when you're back in, like, everything matters. And there's a couple things in the back of my mind when we finish here today that I've got to hit on. But there's this race that's taken place, and you know the other 31 teams are running too. And the only thing is, you don't know until the season begins where everyone is running and how they're running, but you know that they're running. So a lot matters. You want to make sure you find yourself in the postseason, and there is that sense of urgency.
Your quarterback last year, you sat him down, Russell Wilson. Where is that right now? What do you plan to do with him? And what went through that whole thought process of sitting him down?
Yeah, great question. I think two things. Number one, I used this analogy earlier. The season ends, and in our league, it used to be maybe there'd be 2 or 3 changes on a roster. A couple draft picks might make a team. We flip this puzzle upside down. We flip the board back, we scramble it up, we look at our salary cap, we look at our draft picks, we look at free agency, and we look at the draft. We're just starting. Monday we start with the draft work. So all the speculation about what we're trying to do for a quarterback, and I say this respectfully to those, we haven't begun the process of looking at the draft prospects yet. That starts Monday. That impacts Russell Wilson relative to, for us to make the correct decision with him, because there's a lot financially tied into that player. What's in the draft? And I know that everyone says, well, these 6 or 8, but who's that's saying that? In other words, we need to say that, all right? We know historically there might be 1, maybe 2. So where's our quarterback coming from? Is he in the building? Jared Stidham and Russell, obviously Ben DiNucci are with us. And then free agency. And then the sooner we can begin to put these pieces together and look at our musts, the quicker then we'll be able to turn to Russell and say, hey, this is what we're thinking. Back to the decision in season, we went on a stretch where we were winning. We still weren't playing real good offense. We were taking the ball away on defense, and I felt like we needed a spark offensively. So I was proud of how we dug out of that 1-5 hole. And yet you use enough of that energy doing that, we weren't able to finish the way we would have liked. And it's hard not being in the postseason.
How was that received in the locker room for you? Because that's a hard decision to make for a head coach.
Yeah, listen, I think in fairness to the process, you know, Russ wasn't the only starter that we had to sit down. And so, you know, if we're going to do that to a defensive back, or if we feel like it's going to help us win with another player, then we owe that roster the same type of scrutiny at that position. And I think, look, I think the players understand everything we're trying to do. Look, when you get my age and you've done this long enough, all we're interested in is winning. Period. We're not interested in the statistics offensively, defensively, winning and getting in the postseason and having a chance to play in the tournament. And so, and we're not going to be perfect with our decisions, but the intent is strictly to win. And I think overall, I think the players handled all of that well.
Year 1 was not without its moments. Forgive me, a couple Chicago guys sitting on set here. Every Bears executive, coach, general manager that comes in, we got to beat the Packers. We got to beat. In your franchise, where you're sitting, you got to beat the Chiefs.
That's right?
And you did beat the Chiefs.
Yeah, that was the first for a while.
Week 8, what did that win mean in the maturation process and really the trajectory of what you're trying to do over multiple years?
Well, look, Andy's done a great job there. They've got a quarterback that's going to be there long after all of us are done. And when you start and you're coaching in this league, the very first goal is winning the division. It's that small 4-team race. Mm-hmm. And so that's Kansas City. And so they're on top of that hill. The Chargers are going to try to knock them off, the Raiders, as well as the Broncos. And so that was an important win for us at that time. We had just played them. It was just one of those teams where we had played them 2 weeks prior on a Thursday night. We played well defensively. We didn't play well at all offensively, and quite honestly had a poor plan. But we were able to get back then and play that game a couple weeks later, and you know, that's a step.
Certainly. Well, I do want to take you back to the ring and the moment, and I need you to tell me a story. What goes into an onside coming out of half? How did you come to that decision?
I get asked that a lot. And look, Bill Parcells was a big mentor of mine, a coach that I worked under, and he talked a lot about a decision they made. You know, his second Super Bowl, they won with Hostetler. Sims was injured. And they upset a real good 49ers team in the NFC Championship game, Joe Montana. And in that game, it was a low-scoring game. Bill faked a punt. He felt like he had to steal a possession from Montana in that offense. And so really out of respect. And we had beaten Minnesota to get to the Super Bowl in Miami. And we're playing the Colts now, who had just won in Miami 3-4 years ago against the Bears. They'd just been there. They're at the same hotel. Peyton's in the same hotel room. And meanwhile, we've got I don't want to say a young team, but a team in a city that's never even been to this event. But I can recall Bill was the president of the Dolphins at the time, and he said, you got to find a way. This is a hot offense we were playing. We had a good offense as well. You got to find a way to steal a possession. And the problem was our punt looks against Indianapolis punt defense, they weren't really clean. And so, man, I was pushing for that. You know, we have a week, last week, for instance, the bye week. Mm-hmm. You're at home practicing, and the special team coaches and the punter, they come up to my office. They're like, Coach, there's too many looks. And I'm like, all right. But we have something else. And the something else was the onside kick. And so part of it is your players understanding we're going to play this game to win it. And so I wouldn't step into the special teams meetings very often, if not ever. But I remember just saying, look, you know, I'm going to call this. I can't tell you when, but I'm calling it. You know, we're coming here to win a game. And we really did need a flip in momentum. We were down at the half. Mm-hmm. And it was a quick half. Like, it ended very quickly. And then we were able to get the possession, score. And I'm going to say there was probably about 50 minutes that went by from when Payton had his last snap in the second quarter, because the halftime's forever in this game, right? And so, but I'll be honest, that was like swallowing 12 oysters, though. I mean, it wasn't easy. But I think it was something that it was just making sure the players knew. Because, look, think about this for a second. If we don't recover it, let's say it's on the 40-yard line. All right. But that's about 2 completions from Manning after you kick it off from the 20. You follow me? Right. So we weren't exactly like splitting the atom here. And Baskett played it pretty well. It bounced off his chest. And if I knew there was going to be a 2-minute scrum, I would have never called it. I expected it to be a lot cleaner than that. All right. Anyway, but it did provide a momentum swing for us. But I think more importantly, and I mean this relative to just recovering it, it was the message that, like, hey, let's go win a game. Right. It's only 3 hours long. Like, these other tournaments are best of 7 NBA, best of 7 baseball. We're at halftime before we finished our snack. Like, this is a quick game. Right. And so let's not have any regrets.
One last thing. When you get a 70 burger put on you in Miami, did you ever look around and say, what in the hell am I doing back here?
Sure.
I should have stayed on the golf course.
Sure. It's not fun. One of the hardest things, I think, in sport, and I use the analogy in our league, is so much goes into the work week, you know, the late hours. And then when you lose in a way like that, and you go to sleep and your alarm clock goes off Monday, and when you first wake up, you're like, man, hopefully that was a nightmare. Yeah. Right. Then it's like, it's not. There's a little bit of grit that you have to develop. Getting back up, getting in the shower. It's early in the morning, and there's a lot of people counting on you and on us to change that. And so that gets kind of back to what I was saying, the comfortable coffee and the dog walk relative to, you know, the everything matters. And there's something that draws you to that, you know, and so there's a thrill to winning, but there's also that element of, well, we're not going to have to go through the pain of losing. Like a stay of execution, if you will. Right. That's sick. Right. But there's a little bit of that.
Coach, it's great to have you back with a headset, and great to have you here on CBS Sports HQ. We appreciate your time.
You guys got to listen. It's a great spot. Right. I appreciate it.
Well, you come by anytime you like.
Listen, thank you.
Plenty more coverage coming your way here on CBS Sports HQ live from Super Bowl 58. We got you covered from all angles, including our pod squad, the Pick 6 pod, each and every day live from Las Vegas. Download, subscribe, and enjoy the Pick.